Yeah, they could not support it anymore.
It was an awesome operating system for its time.
Oh, yeah. All right, let's go ahead and talk about more sample programs using the concept of a return value. Now that we have seen the simple example, I think we are ready to talk about, let's talk about this one. Okay, let's see if we can handle this one first, and then we'll deal with something else. I'll define a single subroutine called relay. Doesn't do much. It has one bival parameter, which is, I just called it n. And the only thing it does is to return n. Okay, obviously not a very useful subroutine, but it is useful to illustrate the concepts of returning a value. So using the same new standard, I would use main here. And I would use a print statement just like before. This time I will say invoke relay. Invoke relay. I think twice is enough to make the point, so I will just make it invoke relay twice in a nested way. And this time I will specify a particular constant, let's say 2, is used to specify n. The result of the inner invoke will be used to feed parameter n of the outer invoke. And define sub, invoke main, and that's my sample program this time. Okay, so once again, not a really long program, and once again, not a very useful program either. We'll go ahead and take a quick look at the algorithm itself, and then we'll trace it. Particularly, let's take a look at the subroutine relay. The subroutine relay has one parameter. It's n, which is passed by value. And it only has one action, which is to return the value of n. In other words, it doesn't do any calculation. It does not change anything. It's pretty much useless, okay? Except for the illustration of the concept. What is the concept I'm trying to illustrate here? The concept I want to illustrate is on line 6 of the pseudocode, which basically is to say, what do we do when we have an invoke inside another invoke? What happens when I use the return value of one invoke to specify a parameter of another invoke?
Just puts the return the invoke value into the invoke, so it doubles it.
No, this doesn't double anything. It does it twice, yes. It does it twice. Well, the other thing we want to kind of think about before we do it is to think about how many columns maximum this code is going to consume. Okay. Well, we can kind of know how many columns we should be using. One for the line number, that one is easy. One to remember the return line number of main itself, that makes 2 columns. When we get into main, we have to invoke relay. Every time we invoke relay, we need 2 columns, one for the return info and one for parameter n. So now the question is, do I need twice of that because I'm invoking relay twice, or do I only need enough space to invoke relay once? Because we can reuse the space later on.
You reuse that space for the invoke twice.
Okay, so let's go ahead and find out exactly how it is all structured, because this one is different from the previous one in a way, because the previous example has 2 invokes, but the 2 invokes are not related to each other. Okay, except I'm using the return value of the invokes to do the multiplication. In this case, the invokes are related to each other, but because I'm using the result of one invoke to feed to the parameter of the other invoke. Okay, so we'll go ahead and trace this code and find out, what it looks like when we use the same mechanisms to, to trace this, as with our previous program. Okay, we'll take a look at sheet 2. Now, I'm going to change the way I organize the screen a little bit, because the one line is longer than all the other lines, so I will rearrange it like this. So this way we have more space where we display the trace. We don't need one column for comments. Well, I guess we do because we have a print. So we have one column for comments, one for line number, and then we don't have any global variables. The precondition, there's nothing to say, then we can start with line 8. Line 8 invokes main, which means we have to set up a, should I set up a return info, or should I set up a return line number in this case?
Return line.
Return line number, okay? Because main does not return a value. Any subroutine that does not return a value, you can just use return line number as an easy way of doing things. So that means when I execute line 8, I set up a return line number and make it post, because there are no additional lines after line 8. Once I get into the subroutine main, I start executing on line 6. Now here is the problem. What do we do on line 6? How many actions do I have on line 6? There are 3 actions. We have a print, we have one invoke, and then we have a second invoke. We don't have a multiplication, there's no calculations involved on line 6 anymore. What do I have to deal with first? Can I print?
No.
Can I invoke the outer relay? I have to deal with the inner invoked relay first. So that means I have to invoke relay, but only this portion. So when I set it up, to remember where I'm supposed to go back to, I have to use return info because I have to go back to line 6 at least twice. The return info will tell me that I'm supposed to go back to line 6. But by the time I get back onto line 6, I still have the print not done yet. I still have the outer invoke not done yet. The inner invoke, on the other hand, will be done, and it will give me a single value that I can use. I can use that value to specify parameter n of the outer invoke, and that's how we can remember by the time we get back to line 6, what else do we have to do on line 6? And because we are invoking relay with 2 to specify the parameter n, we also have to set up one column for parameter n, which is 2. It has a value of 2 because the invoke specifies a value of 2. Do we have any questions at this point of how we set up column C, D, and E when we invoke the subroutine? Excuse me, just column D and E. Yep.
So this and the very last, is it like some kind of local value?
Some kind of.
Local value.
It's not local. It doesn't really have a name. It's just that the invoke relay 2 goes to n. This entire invocation gives me a single value when it's all done.
I mean, it's placement.
It's placement.
Yeah, like next to return red info. Like it's not global.
What is? What object are you referring to? N is a parameter. See, n is still just a parameter passed by value.
It's not global, not local.
It is not, definitely not global, because that's the whole idea, is to get rid of global variables. But it is not a local variable, it is a bi-val parameter. Okay, if you remember, the difference between a local variable and a bi-val parameter is a local variable always starts with an unknown value. On the other hand, the initial value of a bi-val parameter is specified by the invoke statement. Okay, that's the difference between a local variable and a bi-val parameter. In this case, we have a bi-val parameter, and its initial value is specified by the invoke statement. That makes it 2 in this case. Are we doing okay? Yep, okay. So with column D and column E all set up, we can go into the subroutine of relay. The only action line of relay is line 3. It doesn't do much. It returns n. What is n? N is 2. Effectively, it is returning a value of 2. When we return a value, we just blindly copy and paste the return info cell, change the question mark to the value that we are returning, and we are done. Are we doing okay so far with this? Have I changed the mechanism of returning a value? from before the break. Nope, have not changed anything. Then we go to line 4. Line 4 is going to deallocate these two columns. ODM. And then based on return info, I know I have to go back to line 6. When I get back to line 6 doesn't look like this anymore. It does not look like the one in the pseudocode anymore. It is now the same as what we specified in D7. In other words, we're back to line 6. We're trying to execute line 6 the way it is described here because the inner invoke is now resolved to a value of 2. Okay. When we want to do this, do we have to invoke again? Sure. Okay, we have to invoke again. And this time we're invoking relay again with 2 as our parameter. So we'll basically set it up kind of like last time, but not exactly. We are still on line 6 by the time we get back. We still have a print pending to happen. But what we are printing is now going to be specified by the result of invoke relay. Okay, is that okay so far? And the parameter that we use, oh, I forgot one thing. I forgot to give it a name, return info. And it also has one parameter n, and n has a value of 2. Are we still doing okay this time? Okay. Then we go into the subroutine. The only line in the subroutine that has an action is line 3. Line 3 is returning n. N has a value of 2, so we are effectively just returning 2. When you return a value, you copy and paste the return info cell. You replace the question mark with the value that you're returning, in this case 2, and you're done. It is important to remember we do not execute line 6 at this point. All we are doing is to resolve what the question mark should be and not to execute the line inside the return info cell. Okay, that part is very important. Then we move on to line 4. Line 4 is going to deallocate the columns. And then according to the return info cell, we have to go back to line 6 again. But this time when we get back to line 6, it looks like this. It looks like print 2. There are no calculations to perform anymore, and there are no more invocations to deal with. So we can just go ahead and print the value of 2 either to the screen or to a piece of paper. And then we are done with line 6. After line 6, we go to line 7. Line 7 will deallocate the column that I allocated earlier for invoking main. And then we go back to post. And then we are done. Do we have any questions about this one? Yep.
Row 7.
Mm-hmm.
You know when you say invoke relay in parentheses 2, where are you getting that 2 from? Is that from the end?
It's from the execution of line 3. Okay, if you look up the line 3, the line number here, we are executing line 3 of the pseudocode, which is returning n. But n at that time had a value of 2, so we are effectively returning 2. When you return 2, you copy and paste the return info cell, and then you just replace the question mark with the value you're returning, and therefore we have the 2 replacing the question mark. Yep.
This line, this process invoke relay 2 goes into the end.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I'm just a little confused how it transfers in just 2 because of the real value.
Say it again.
Like in line 11, it turns in print 2.
Mm-hmm.
Instead of this invoke relay goes to n. So you're replacing n is 2. So invoke relay 2 goes to 2.